Okay, we are now being recorded. We are March 9th, and we are going to be doing the several blocks in the last half of row 8. 2 of them, Mom wants to just kind of give you a heads up to kind of show you what you can do, and they're not just some tips and tricks on those. We're not going to actually get into the delving in of those. Then we're going to work on one block in particular that may be a little bit of a bugaboo for some people, but we're going to show you how it works. The first one is block J, and it's this one. It's in the pink fabric, and everything is applique. The background fabric is just one piece glued down to the foundation. It's not held down until the appliques are put down. Now, with that in mind, Mom has got some tips on making sure the background stays flat. You see, there's no puckers in this one. So she's going to kind of give you some tips on doing that and getting the appliques lined up so that they have a cross here and they go corner to corner without having any major measuring or anything on your part. All right, I'll pull this back out of the way, and Mom, it's all yours.
Okay, first off, you will, and I don't have a big enough piece of fabric, but kind of bear with me here. The fabric that will go on here will be on the unprinted side of the foundation. And I will stitch. I recommend it because nothing else is going to hold that fabric to the foundation but the stitching. So stitch on all of the red lines, and remember when you're going around this curve to lift the foot and move the fabric and foundation, because if you don't, it'll make little puckers in here. Sometimes if they'll end up out here where you don't want them. After you got all of the red lines stitched on, then I turn this over so that, and you all turn your imagination on now, so because in reality I would have this stitched. There would be lines of stitching here. Now, to put these appliques on here and get them on where they're supposed to go, you need to use the friction pen. It goes away with heat, the mark does. And right there I can see that's the middle. That's where 4 pieces have to meet. The next one that's important is this one out here. And this one, likewise, this one. And if my fabric was big enough, there'd be another one down here. And since this is curved, if you're going to do hand applique, I recommend, this is an easy way to do it. Take and mark little dotted lines along where you can see that black line. Now remember, your stitching is going to be in here, but this gives you a visual guide for where the edge of your applique should be. And I do that on all of the appliques. The first ones I put down then and so on that I sew down are these here.
The cat's
eye shaped pieces.
Okay.
And
Now,
once they're on, then
is this
I
one a raw edge applique or a different one?
This would be a closed edge turn or closed shape turned edge.
Yeah.
Closed shape
turned edge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I go back to here. After I've got these 4 on, I will go back to this, and you can mark it ahead of time, or you can mark them all if you want, but I put a dot here and a dot out here. That's the outer end. You match up 1 point here, 1 point here, it's going to go fine. If you want, you can make your little dotted lines on this, because after it's all on and pressed, these little red marks are going to go away because I'm doing it with a friction pen.
But this is just a way to lay it out so that you get your pieces laid out to where they go corner to corner and straight up and down without any wiggle or any wobbles in it. You know they're going to be exactly where they should be.
Right. And because there's no seam line to line anything up with, this is about the best way to do it. If I had a seam line, that wouldn't be a problem, or it's not really a problem. It's just a hurdle there to get over. So that's what I do. I mark after the stitching has been done, after the stitching on the red line has been done, I go back and I mark all of these, and then I prepare my appliques and put them on, or get them prepared ahead of time. I don't really care. They've got to go on here and put them where it's noted, because this one says it's app 1. So the one over here that's app 1 would be this piece right here. And it was planned to fit there. In case there are some slight differences in the pattern pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Have I lost anybody?
Nope.
Okay,
Following along.
Jenny's got that figured out. All right.
You're muted, honey.
I said, I think I'm following along.
Okay. Well, in that case, that's
My
just
main, well, I think my main question is, so you would have that piece already. You said you've glued it down to the foundation and then you have stitched on the red line. So you would already have kind of an outline on the other side and you're marking just outside of it, right?
Right. But when you lay that applique on here, that outline that you stitch is going to be covered.
Right. Oh, so you're just basically, is this line that you've marked supposed to show after you've applied your applique?
This is
Yeah.
supposed to be the very edge
The
of the
very
applique.
outer edge of the applique is where those marks are that I put on there.
Okay,
It
fantastic.
just helps you keep the appliques from getting a little bit wonky. And you don't have much room, but if with a block that's nothing but applique and they're straight up and down, sideways, corner to corner, you're going to see any kind of wiggle in placement. So this just assures that your placement is going to be very symmetrical.
Okay.
So
Cool.
That's
That makes
how
sense.
that one works. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
okay, the next one she had something on was this one. Whoops. And it is block L in row 8. Now it's got four pieces.
Okay, this is a piece, this is a unit, this is a unit, and this is a unit. So there's basically
Okay,
4 units
triangles.
in the block.
Yeah.
So you do all the piecing first. You got one, you put 1B, and then you sew 2A to it and 3A. And we have direction arrows on this one, but we've come up with a cutting guide that where you don't need the arrows anymore. It's just an added thing in there. But the cutting guide has you cut these the right angle to put them on. So piece these 4 units and get them done. Then sew them together. And press the seams in a rotating manner. And that made that little 4 patch turn out right. Now, the appliques, here's the appliques, these 4 pieces. And I would cut them out.
Here again, closed shape, turned edge applique. So
Right.
prepare them.
Prepare them.
Right.
Now, you have the option.
And this is the part we wanted to make sure everybody's aware of. You do have an option in this one because these appliques have a little different twist to it.
Now, you don't have to stitch on the red line. If you want to, I would do that before joining any of these units together.
Oh, so you don't do it after.
If you don't want to stitch on the red line, that's not a problem. Because you see, there's a seam right there and at corner to corner. Now, let me put this.
The idea behind the red lines are placement lines that are just a flicker inside the outer edge of where the applique is. So it gives you some kind of a placement line. Now, it also serves to hold your background fabric or whatever fabric you're putting your applique on top of. It serves to hold that in place. With the one we just showed you with the pink, there's nothing to hold that background fabric in place. So you want to sew your placement lines. It marries the two, your fabric and your foundation together to keep that background from moving. With this one, simply because you have stitched through here, and your placement lines are these red lines right here. And it's the same on this one. We just got the seam allowance covering it up. You've got a line of stitching really close to where that placement line is. So if you're good at applique and you don't want this additional security of holding the background fabric in place, you wouldn't have to stitch on that stitching line. So that's one of the things. You also don't have to have that stitching line to line the piece up on the front side.
When you've got the piece ready to applique, all you do is put one point here and the other point out here on that line.
It goes right on the seam line, so it lines itself up. So that's an option for you if you want to. You can sew the placement lines, but you don't have to. In this case, they are an option just because they're close enough to an already sewn seam to hold the background in place. Does it make sense? Linda,
Yes,
I
I
know
think
we're
so.
kind of way ahead on this. Do you have background in applique? Is some of what we're looking at?
Oh, sure, yes, it makes sense to me. That's
Okay.
very pretty block. I like it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So do you have any
I'm
questions on?
following this okay. I mean, I don't have any materials yet, but
I think your
I'm
stuff is
following
going
this
to be
okay.
coming out here right away. I've got the new row coming out here. I think the end of this week is it's in process in the back room here.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
but hold on to it until April. Don't mail anything to me
Oh, you're
until
the
April.
one that's moving.
I'm the one that's,
That's
going to be away for a few weeks.
That's right. I got it. Okay. I got the note down. I just didn't put the name
Yeah.
with the note while I'm looking at
I'm the person that's been giving you a lot of grief about when is it going to be mailed? Because I don't want it sitting outside on my front step for 2 weeks while I'm gone,
I can understand
Mhm.
that completely. So,
Mhm.
okay. Well, in
All
that
right.
case, then we are going to move on to the next block that Mom wants to look at in depth. And this is block G, which is the very center block in row 8.
Ooh.
Okay, the
Okay,
reason,
you're ooh, Jenny tells me what? You
It's,
like, or what do you
I
see?
like the block, but I also see some Y seams.
the
But
reason that
knowing
I
you,
chose, the reason that I chose this block to work on today is because it has Y seams. And
Mhm.
Y seams cause a panic no matter where.
And when Jane did hers, she did not put seams in these.
Right.
These were complete blocks that she pieced in that way. So in keeping with the reproducing rather than re-engineering to make it easier, we put Y seams in where she had them. But we're going to show you what you do with them because the foundation makes them very, very easy to do.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't think you're convinced, huh, Linda?
To start off with,
Okay.
you have 16 pieces, individual pieces of foundation,
Okay, let's look at the block.
and not one of them is pieced together. That's it.
Each one of these, there's 8 in here, and then you've got all your pieces around the edge. So each piece is its own. Okay.
Okay, I have trimmed out the pieces. And another point to bring out is this point right here, that one, and the exterior point of every one of these diamond shaped pieces is at the outside edge of your block. That's where the seam line will be when you sew them together. That's here and here and here, all around here. That will be the outer edge of the block when it's finished. Okay, now all of these pieces are numbered. This is unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, 4, oh good, 5, 6, and on around. 1 through 8. And then we start with 9, 10, 11, 12, and around the outside edge. We're going to deal with the inside first. So let's scoot those off and out of the way. And I'm going to leave them in their orientation because that's where they go. Okay, so what's the inside of what's the center of the block and what's not? The center of the block on your foundation has a blunted end. The outer one doesn't.
So you know if you've got them oriented this way, you got it backwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
and quick question, does it matter if they are oriented backwards?
yes, because of the joining of the seams, the numbered seams.
Oh, okay. That
The
makes sense.
joining of the seams that join them, it matters because of that.
Okay, let me back up just a little bit for Linda's sake here. When we put pieces together like this, there's normally a method and a process. You want to do one thing first and then second and then third. Our way of noting that is if you look on these pieces, you'll see in the seam allowance, you'll see numbers with circles around them. Those numbers with the circles are the way you join units or pieces together.
The order
that you do it. You want to put the pieces with the ones together first. So these have ones. So if you would happen to have this laid this way, you've got a 1 with a 2 and a 2 with a something 8. That's not the way it goes together. You put them together with the circled numbers matching each other. That's how you put all these together. And then when you sew the circled numbers, you sew them in order.
In numeric order, yep, that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, I did, I don't know if you noticed, but it was me that ordered a separate order of the larger sampler blocks that you have. I think they're 12-inch
Yes.
or,
Yes.
yeah, because I wanted to get a sense on pattern that was larger,
Mhm.
what the process was. And
Right.
so,
And the
right,
process,
so yeah, so this
Right.
is the way it was explained on that pattern. It makes
okay,
sense actually.
the process that we use, no matter whether it's this one or that one or anything else we have, the process is always the same. We use the same notations on it. With this one, we've incorporated applique. We've come up with some interesting other things that we've done specifically for reproducing the Mrs. Stickle sampler. But our
Right.
processes are generally always going to be the same as what you got in the sampler that you got.
All right, so I actually have one question that since I haven't put any of this stuff together yet,
Uh-huh.
and I haven't touched the other pattern. Does the backing ever remain on the finished block, or does all of that get removed along the way?
Okay.
I'm not clear on that.
Okay, and that's a good question. If I am putting the foundation itself is not woven, therefore, when you sew
Right.
on it, it is going to perforate it, the same as you do with paper or any other non-woven medium of any sort.
Okay, so I was thinking it was like Pellon, but it isn't really.
It's not Pellon, but a lot of people compare it to that. So yes, your thinking
Yeah.
is very, very much correct. If you're going to use this product, whatever you're making out of it, you're going to use it a lot. You're going to put it on your bed. You're going to sleep under it every night. You're going to make the bed. You're going to what? Then anytime you have perforated the foundation heavily, that movement of that project will eventually wear the remaining perforations apart, and you'll end up with pieces that stay inside your quilt.
Maybe
Because-
a bunch of migrants.
And they don't, because it doesn't wash away.
I see.
If you're going to put this into a wall hanging, or let's say you want this Mrs. Stickle sampler to be an heirloom that you're not going to actually use a lot, then you can leave it in.
Okay.
It launders, it softens when it
Okay.
launders. You decide what you want to do ahead of time, because if you use a long stitch length to sew it, when you try to tear it out with a longer stitch length, you will tear your stitches if you try to tear it out that way.
Right.
So the perforations are really important in that. But if you're going to put it into a like a wall hanging, let's say you want to take a big pineapple and make it into a very decorative wall hanging of some sort, that foundation can be left in. You may want to lengthen your stitch length out to like whatever your machine defaults to when you turn it on is fine.
Okay.
Leave it in.
When I
Okay.
did miniatures, I left them in because I intended to use them for Christmas tree ornaments. So I did put the foundation left in. Otherwise, I take it out of everything.
And it's a personal preference.
Does it over time? Does it sort of ball up and sink to one?
It
Yeah.
will
Corner of
not
a
ball
piece?
unless it's been laundered a lot or heavily handled, and the seam lines where it was sewn, if the foundation becomes separated and there's nothing holding it in place. As long as the stitching is there and it has not perforated it, it will stay there.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
It's always on the couch.
Basically what we
Okay.
used to tell people a lot at quilt shows is if it's going to be a heavy use or everyday use item, if you're giving it to a kid, if you're giving it to a mom who has kids, or somebody who has dogs, something that's going to get washed a lot, we recommend taking it out.
Yeah.
So you'll use
Okay.
a quarter stitch length. But if it's something that you're not going to use a lot, it's not going to see that kind of heavy use, it's not going to be washed once every couple of weeks or once a month, then absolutely you can leave it in. It just adds a little bit of extra stability.
Right. It seems like it would. Yeah. Add some stability. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Now I've got all of these trimmed. And one other thing to think ahead, I'm going to tell you this ahead of time. You're going to be sewing. This is going to be the outside edge of your quilt. I'll get down here where I don't try to. Okay. The seam
Outside
lines
edge of your
trim-
quilt or your block?
The block.
the block.
The
Sorry.
block. Okay.
Seam line that's printed on the foundation stops right here. But I already know that I'm going to be stitching this way, and this is the outside edge. I want to stitch here. So I went in ahead of time and I drew a seam line with the pencil, not a friction. It's going to get taken out, so you don't have to worry about anything like that. But I went in with the pencil and a straight edge, and I extended this line out to the outer edge. And I
Oh,
did
so it
that.
doesn't, it's not printed like that already.
No, evidently not.
Okay.
That's all right, we'll get it later. That may be something we need to add to the foundation, and that way the stitching line, you go
The
out to
stitching
the
line
outer
goes
edge.
out the outer edge
Yeah.
on these, and it's only on the diamond points. I marked it. You don't have to. You don't have to sew to the outer edge if you don't want to, but it just helps when you start putting this thing all together, and it keeps it together out at the out, because this is going to be the outside edge of your block. There's no border around that little block to hold all those pieces in order. Okay. I think if I've confused everybody, I'm going to take these two pieces, and the ones match.
Okay.
So I'm going to put those edges together and take a pin and stick it through that point. And I didn't come out quite on the point on that end, so we'll try again.
But match up your points.
Match up your points. And I'm going to put a clip on it.
Okay. And she uses clips quite a bit rather than pins.
Pins will distort, yes.
Pins will distort, and these are such small pieces that the distortion makes a big difference. So clips a lot of times will work better.
Okay, now I'm going to just clip just barely on that edge, because the sewing machine foot on my machine is narrow enough that I can do that. Okay, once I've set the needle, then the clip can come off. And I'm going to back up. When I get my foot on that foot feed here. Where did it go? Okay, we're going to back up. And now go forward. And when I get to the corner here, I don't want to sew right on the very end. I'm going to hit the back up. Well, I ended up on the end there. Okay, now take it out. And Butterfingers here can't seem to hold on to anything.
Thanks for those jeans, Grandma.
Huh?
I said, thanks for those jeans. You passed them down.
Okay, and we have that seam is sewn.
Okay.
Go on to number,
Not quite.
go on to number 2. Okay, the thing is,
It's looking really great. Let me come up for a minute and take a look.
on this line here, I had this piece on the bottom, and I'm below the line,
Just a little.
just a little. All right, it's reverse sewing time. Okay, this line, this stitching line,
Let me throw right up here.
yeah,
Okay, you can see this is just a little bit off. You're like 1 or 2 threads off.
but
Now-
it'll make a difference in a block because the blocks are so small to begin with.
Okay. So this one, then you want to make sure that you put, whoops.
Got drops here. Okay. So that means I have to go back. I'm not going to do it on this one, but I would correct that. Now, you press your seam allowances both ways so they move. Now, number 2 goes on next, and that's, no, it's not number 2. There's number 2.
Okay.
Okay, 2 and 2,
Okay.
put them together. And the same thing, match up the point. And you might have to play around a little to get the point spot on. And I'm going to put my pin, bulky as can be, It's not on that line.
You're trying to match up the seam
I'm
lines.
trying to match up the seam line. Okay, that's closer.
Okay.
Now then, the next one to match up is that point right there. Well, I'm off again. Just
And we're not off simply because of anything other than when you trim the outer edge of each of those blocks, you may not get it trimmed exactly perfect.
right.
So when you line up the edges, the points may not be exactly points right where they need to be.
Now I'm good. I got some more gadgets. I'm one of the original gadget girls. Anyway, you want to stand this pin straight up. You don't want it like this. You want him straight up. Now, these little pins I found are they're worth a lot. It's a fine pin. And I've got that straight up, so I know that's where I want it. So I'm going to take this little pin, I'm going to stick it in crossways.
What are you stabbing it into?
Huh?
What are you stabbing it into?
She made a little thingamajigger to put her machine on it. It's got a little roll of foam right here that she's.
So I could do that on a pin cushion.
Yeah, do it
Yeah,
on
there's a
yeah,
little pin cushion.
yeah.
I stuck it on my pin cushion. Okay,
Yeah.
now here again, I'm going to go start. I start back from the corner, back up. And when I get to that corner, I'm going to go back forward. Come on, little fella. Gloria, you better do your thing right. And I don't want to sew past the corner, so I'm going to back up. I'm about a stitch length away. This is ordinarily, we don't have to be this picky, but it pays off in the long run here.
On this particular block.
Yes.
And I'm still a little off, which I'm not happy with. That's worse than the other one. All right. That means
I can't see your hands.
it's off on this way here and it's off here.
You went one. Okay, so
In the middle it switched. So okay. Time to reverse stitch. And everybody I tell everybody don't have a heart attack because I'm only cutting the threads.
It's just so much faster to do it like that.
Oh yeah, it is. Especially when you do this. And a 28mm rotary cutter works so much better than the 45.
Right. Well, I've got a little 16mm one and it's even better.
Yeah.
Except the blade gets dull real quick. Okay. Let's try this again. Now, I'm going to go the other direction. And you don't have to stitch. Okay. That's better. And this one.
Is there a glare on? Can you guys see a glare on this or not?
Yeah, it is pretty glaring.
There is a glare. We can kind of see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try something different here.
It would help if
That took care of
that
the
actually
glare.
helped. Yeah.
I turned off my machine light.
It would help, Mom, if you had more like overhead light.
Well, I did, and there was a shadow.
Oh,
Okay, I've got that one.
That's not too bad.
Let me try something.
And this one.
You keep going.
yeah, that one immediately glares.
Okay.
That's the machine.
You have a
So I'm
little
going to have to wing it without a light. That's all right. So I'm going to start at that point in the corner.
So.
And I'm starting at the point, and I'm going to go forward
Oh yeah, that's much better.
and back a little, and then forward on the line. And I'm getting close to that pin. So I'm going to hold the pin down. And the machine is going to pull the fabric off the pin. Okay.
Is that better now? Do I have the light better?
It is, yes. I don't see any glare.
Okay.
That's on the line on that side, and it's on the line on that side.
Okay, then
Success.
let's look here. Whoops. We're there. Right there. We're on the line there. Then we flip it over and we're on the line here. So
Right.
that's what she was wanting. Okay. Even a little bit off on that one is going to give us a problem just because of the size of the piece.
Right. Now,
So how
that's
many
the way,
times can I mess up and rip the seams out? Because that's gonna happen on that one.
Oh
for
yeah,
me.
that's right. That was another thing too, Linda. If you can rip these, we just sewed it. She's ripped it out, sewed it again, and you can't tell any difference in what was going on. So there's a lot of strength in the foundation
Mm-hmm,
for that type of thing too.
mm-hmm.
okay, now, I haven't
But,
removed
but
the
like,
foundation from the seam
how
allowances.
many times can I do that?
I've
many
done it
times
3
can I rip it
times and not had a problem.
Oh, great.
I did
might
it 4
take that.
times, and after I got done stitching, the foundation fell out.
Okay, so but 3 times works. 4 times you might have
Four-
you might
four
have done
times
it.
is a little much.
Okay.
Okay, now I've got enough of this done. All of the units, all of these 8 go together this way. And the more you add on, if you think you're going to be sewing into any of the seam allowances otherwise, then you want to fold this out of the way.
Get over here a little closer to the camera. 'cause
Okay,
I
can
can't come close to
fold
you.
this out of the way if you have to. It won't happen right away, but it will eventually.
So you're going to want to kind of fold seam allowances out of the way in the middle.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
don't take any of the foundation out. Usually we tell you to take the foundation out of the seam allowance, but not here because they have to have it out here. Now, this
Okay.
much of it's done. So I'm going to go on and we're going to do this Y seam and that Y seam.
Okay.
And remember now, all of this needs to be joined first before you go to a Y seam. But for this,
For demonstration purposes, we're going to move
demonstration
on.
purposes, we're going to move on. Now then, I have here seam 9 to seam 9, seam 10 to seam 10. So we sew number 9 first. That's the first one.
Normally you would have sewed 1 through 8 and then move on to 9, but
Not this time.
we're doing this for demonstration purposes at this point.
So here again, go to the point right here. And the point here and the point here match.
Okay.
And I'm going to take the pin out. I've got them matching. I'm going to pin it. And these pins are kind of heavy, but they work good. I've got the pin is on the seam line right there. You can't see much of it, but there it is.
Okay.
It's on the seam line there. And I know it's on the seam line here. Now, the next time I'm going to go to this mark and come through here on the corner. And they match. Okay, now let's go back to this cute little pin that I discovered. And I'm going to put it right here.
So you do pin that one in place instead of putting a clip?
I pinned that one because the clips and the machine feet don't want to argue with each other. Now I put this other pin in here.
And all you're doing there is making sure that the
Line up.
line on one side is matching the line on the other.
It's kind of like if it matches on this point and it matches on this point, doesn't necessarily mean it matches here.
Okay.
And it has to match here also. Okay, I've got matching.
That weird.
Now it's time to start at the outside. And I'm going to start here. No back stitching, just sew. So let's go. Me and this foot are going to have a talk after a while. And took the pin out before you get to them. After you pass that point,
Which point?
the point
Oh, the
out-
point out the outer
out,
point.
back stitch a couple of stitches and then carry on.
Okay, because you're starting at the outer
Try to
edge.
get outer edge.
So just into where the point is in the edge of the star, and backstitch at that point and then sew to the center.
Yeah, and back stitch at the center.
Okay.
And so we have that part of the seam sewn.
All right, let's see what it looks like. Let me see here what this looks like. Okay. That's sewn there, started right there. We go out. This is the
I
point.
started here and I sewed in this way.
This is the point right here where she stopped and backstitched.
Do you always start at the outer edge and sew in instead of from the in?
Not always.
Not always. Just if we want you to do that because of stability or some reason, we put that in the directions.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now,
So
here's
I have a
this
question
thing.
on the other side of that. Turn it over again.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay, so I see in some areas there are lines that extend into the seam allowance.
I drew
Does
those.
that mean
those
you're
like-
supposed to sew on those
Mhm,
versus if there is no line, you're not supposed to sew in the seam allowance?
No, sometimes if there isn't a line, we'll tell you to sew through the seam allowance. Just
Okay.
do it. You sew through the seam allowance. On this one, I marked it because, well, I could, I
We-
decided ahead of time to mark it.
As
So
a
there's
general,
that's not consistent in the marking of the pieces. in
no,
other-
what our general thing is that we normally do not sew through seam allowances. But with all of our other stable piecing, you will see that that we do not put marks through the seam allowances very rarely. But if there is a mark through the seam allowance, then that means that you are supposed to sew through it for stability's reasons, for keeping a point of fabric in place, for some reason that we found makes the block construction easier.
Okay, so if there is a line there, that means something.
Yes, if there is a line there, you're supposed to sew on it. Sometimes what we have done is we've told somebody, okay, make your own lines if you choose, because either way works. So, but if there's something along that line, we give you that in the directions that says to mark this if you choose to do this. But it's something that maybe your hands don't need that extra help in sewing the seam line down. You know how to do that without sewing through it. So some places that's not marked, but we give you the option.
Well, I'll tell you what,
Okay.
in the experience of making this block, the more pieces you have together, and if you got all this together and you want to mark this out here, it's about like putting socks on a rooster to get it marked right.
In other words, after you've got it all sewn together.
After you got it all sewn together, it's a pain in the royal kazoo. So I did it ahead of time this time. Now, we got that on. It's going to go here.
This seam has to be sewed to here, right? No, this
Nope.
one sews to here.
This one, so that's 10.
Okay.
10 goes to 10. So how do we do that? Well, we wrap this around here, and then you can crease that. Just wrap it around.
There
And I'm
again,
going to
pin your corners.
pin the corners. Okay, it's on the seam line here. It's on the seam line here. Now I'm going down here to this corner. And we want this to match, and it does.
And it should, because it's been sewn the other direction. So if it doesn't match, then you may be stretching something, you may be pushing
Now,
something into a spot that makes it give you a little pucker.
if I sewed from this side in, there's a good chance that I'll get a little bubble right here, and we don't want to see that. So I'm going to sew from this center out.
Simply because your feed dogs are going to pull from underneath, and they could pull something and create a bubble. Where if you're sewing from the top side, you're sewing from the center out.
Put this light on to see
Yeah.
a little bit.
Go ahead and leave that on right now.
Okay.
But if you sew from the center out, then you do not run the risk of putting that little bubble in there.
Okay, I've set my needle. It's in the fabric. It's holding everything together. Take that pin out. Now then I'm going to sew forward, backward, and
when you sew backward, you want to make sure you don't go backward farther than the beginning of the seam line, or you're going to create a little pucker in that seam when you open it up, because you'll have a
Right.
stitch holding something that it shouldn't be holding.
now out here I'm at the outer edge, and there's the little point. But I want more stability, because when I tear the foundation out, if I don't back stitch here, I might end up pulling stitches loose that I don't want loose. So I'm going to back up 2 or 3, and then I'm going to sew off the end of the fabric.
Okay, and that's the same, like where my finger is pointing on this one. That's this point right out here that you stop, back stitch a little bit here before you go on out to
Right.
the edge. Okay,
And there it is.
all right. Let's lay
And we don't have a pucker anywhere. There's
okay.
no pucker here. There's no pucker here. It's all nice, flat, and smooth.
Okay, I'm gonna hold this just here. I want to make sure that everybody that's watching or will watch can see that we're not holding it a certain way to take a pucker out where there is one. There just isn't anything in there.
What about on the bottom in the middle of that?
Here, where my
When
thumb,
No,
when
to
you-
the right. There's a shadow on it that makes it look like there's a little dip.
this
the-
is moved, this is
No,
bent
It's
up.
curled forward.
Okay, so put your finger on the outer corner. Go down to the bottom corner. Now go up that seam just a little bit, like
That's
right
where I
where grandma's
folded the
finger just is,
fabric.
right there, like right in the middle.
Right here, right there,
Right, yeah, right in the of the white square.
right here.
Yeah.
That's just a place in the fabric that where it was folded.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So it's not in the seam. That's just it needs to be ironed.
It does, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that makes sense.
Yes, it's not in the seam.
Just
It
want to,
needs-
clarify.
No, I don't blame you. No.
I gotta question these things, keep you on the straight and narrow.
Okay.
Okay, so that one's in. Seams 9 and 10 have been sewn. Comes seam 11 and 12. And that brings us to this piece. And this piece, the fabric that goes on here was cut so that the straight grain is along the outer edge, which is where you want it. You don't want biases out here if you can possibly avoid it. So the same process. I'm going to fold the seam allowances out of the way. And I didn't take the foundation out of the seam allowance, because when you do that, you tend to pull the fabric away from the rest of the foundation and it won't go together as good as you want it to. So
Plus, you would tear
in
out
that
all of
point-
your circles, your numbers.
Do what?
Plus, you would tear out all of your numbers that you need for piecing.
yeah, and
Sometimes,
you
yeah.
need you need the numbers for reference.
Yeah, and some of what we do on these blocks in this quilt are different than what we may do in as a general when we piece with stable piecing as a general rule, simply because we're doing so many different pieces, so many different angles. They're such small pieces that we have to modify just a little bit to make these use the same basic ideas. So some places we may do this and then we tell you don't do it here because of this reason.
Okay, I have the points matching here and on this side, but I don't want to take and rock the pin and pin it because that'll shift the piece of fabric underneath. So I'm going to put the pin in at an angle, bring it out at an angle, and it's on the line, but you notice the pin didn't go through here. This piece is still in the right spot though. Now, going up to here, our next match point has to be here. Oh, good. What am I doing wrong or right? Now,
It came out right, huh?
it came out right. All right. I don't want to trap all this foundation in here, and I'm going to sew off of the block. So I'm going to remove that foundation.
After you've already made sure everything fits in place.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to remove the foundation that's on the underside so it doesn't get trapped when you sew the seam.
Right.
Okay.
Now then, I've got this standing up. I pinned this in place. I'm going to start sewing out here. And I'm going to go forward. And I'm not going to bother with back stitching.
Why not?
Don't need to, it's at the outer edge.
Okay.
Back stitch at that point. That's where you
Oh,
want to
one
keep.
at the point. Okay. You're
Mhm.
not at the outer. Okay.
Now, I don't want to catch any of this next piece in that seam, so I'm folding it out of the way. Go on to the corner, back stitch.
And I'm trying to get this, what she's doing, and I'm not having my luck.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, buddy.
All right, so that piece is sewn on.
So when you did, which one did you just sew?
Just sewed that
This
one.
one?
Number 11.
This one. So when you got down here, you pulled all of this.
Everything out, and I
This-
even folded this down
You
out of the
folded
way.
that down out of the way. So all you were sewing through were just basically going through, it looked like that. You're
Mhm.
pulling all this out of the way. So
Right.
you're going through just two pieces of fabric and the foundation on this side and on that side.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, now I don't need this piece of foundation Yeah, I do too. Press it out of the way. Well, we got this wonky looking little piece again. Okay, which means hold it like this. Bring this around until you line up. Pin there. Ooh, missed the corner. Okay, on the corner. Good deal. And here I'm going to slide that in. It's still on the line. I'm off the corner. The pin looks like it's off the corner, but the corner is still where it should be. Now, you fold this back out of the way. You can fold it and crease it. It doesn't matter. Am I on there? I'm on it there. Good. Now I'm going to put this in here. Like I said, just because it matches at the end doesn't necessarily mean it matches in the middle. That's why this is not a fast quilt to make. But if you do this, you'll have a really accurate block. Now I'm going in. I'm going to start at the corner.
Okay, that's right. We're starting at the
I'm
inside
starting the
corner.
inside corner. And I'm going to drive forward and then go backward. And I'm going to go to this point, the point of the diamond, and then I'm going to reverse a couple stitches, and then I'm going to go forward off the fabric. All right, and we've got that corner set in. Now, when we deal with the foundations, obviously, since this edge is a straight edge, that means that these two are bias edges on this piece alone. The stabilizer keeps the bias from blooming, which it wants to do real well. And it went in flat.
Okay, there again. Do you get the thread out of the way?
Yeah, get the thread out of the way. So
Okay. And the underneath side here. There's no puckers anywhere. Any place you want to see. You can see
And
how
you're-
the,
So all of these pieces, you've already, you've glued them to your foundation, right?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, these pieces are, instead of sewing to the foundation, all the pieces you're going to put in here are glued to their own piece of foundation, and the sewing is putting the units together. So you're always dealing with a single piece of foundation with a single piece of fabric glued to it.
okay, I got the one quadrant done, sort of.
So now you're back to
I'm
putting,
back to putting the diamond pieces on. If you're doing it, I'm doing this, I'm skipping from one to the other for demonstration purposes. But if you're doing it as piece in your block, then I would sew all of the diamond shaped pieces together first.
okay,
Okay, now I'm going to start at the corner.
and I've got to be
And I
better on my lighting.
go forward and backward and forward.
And basically it's just lining things up, pulling the pieces around, matching the numbers. And doing your Y seams one at a time. And from the first seam that you do whenever you put a square on or a triangle on, you sew from the outer edge to the middle. The second part of that, you sew from the middle to the outer edge so that you don't have any bumps. And that's basically what we're looking at.
I'm gonna go on and put more star pieces together. Okay, we got 4 and 4.
Okay,
Well, they're upside down, but there they are, 4 and 4.
so you're looking at, and you just keep putting them together.
Yeah,
Okay,
hopefully you try to match them up out here, and then it'll make it easier to get it to match here in the center most of the time. Okay, I was a little bit off, so we gotta shift over, and that depends on where I trimmed the piece. Yeah,
Okay.
see, I got something that's
Okay.
I didn't
You did-
trim something
it's
exactly
not the
right.
printing of the foundation, it was the trimming of the seam allowance around the edge, and normally you line up the outer edges, and that's going to give you away, and then you move it to where it's correct based on the printed sewing line, not necessarily the printed line that's the outer edge of that block. You may not have trimmed it exactly perfectly straight.
Okay,
Okay.
now on this one, it looks like I've got a little bit of a bubble here. And I think I threw a pin out of the way.
There's probably several on the floor.
There probably is. We're gonna have to clean up in here when we get done playing. Sometimes I can hit these really good, and sometimes I have to fish around for them. Okay, that one's in good shape. This one didn't stay that way.
Okay.
Okay, now then. All right. Most of the time I start in from the end of the seam a little ways and back up, but I'm not going to do it on here because I really want that stability. It's putting a little extra bulk of thread in the middle, but I'm going to deal with it and be happy with it.
Okay. So basically you're just going to keep moving around and around and putting the star together and then putting the corners in and putting the triangle pieces in. And when you get done, you're going to have
Now, the
the block.
farther you go around the block, the harder you're going to get into this right here.
Get it over here in front of the camera.
You're going to get into this area here, and you don't want to stitch through this stuff. So that's where you're going to have to start folding some things back.
Okay. So you got to do a little more hand manipulation in
Right.
the middle. Never mind. I'll get it later.
Okay, now seam 5 and seam 5.
So there again, it's just moving the pieces from the middle out so that you don't trap that seam allowances in the center of that star because they need to float, right?
Right. Because when you press the seam allowance, after you get all done and you got the foundation out, and you press the seam allowances in that rotating manner, if you sewed any part of this little bitty circle here, they won't rotate.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I think I'm going to let her continue to sew.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Is there anything that we need to show, we need to clarify anything that's I'll get my face on camera here since I'm talking. But anyway, is there anything else that we need to clarify on this one? Because it's now just repeating the same thing over and over and manipulating and getting your pieces out of the way so that you don't trap seam allowances. Does what we were talking about make sense to you, Linda? I think you're muted.
Yes,
Okay.
it makes sense. Thank you.
It does make sense. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. It's like, 'cause I think you've got quite a bit of sewing experience from what I'm understanding. Is that correct?
I have a lot of clothing experience and I've done a reasonable amount of applique.
Okay. Well, your
And
clothing
some-
experience is going to help an awful lot.
Some sampler blocks. Yeah.
Okay. The clothing and stuff is a lot of where it makes it easy for people who know how to set in princess seams and add collars and make the shoulder caps fit right and gather full fluffy sleeves onto a cuff. And when you get to those things, those of us who've done that understand how to make some of this stuff work where quilters.
Yeah, you need to be able to make stuff fit sometimes.
Yes, and sometimes it gets a little creative getting it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm impressed that Jane Stickle did all of this by hand, right? There's no machine
Yeah.
Needle
in
and
her
thread.
quilt.
yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, she did it all by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jane's brother was a tailor, so I imagine that she had some experience either working with him, helping him out at his shop, or just learning some of this from him. So a lot of these techniques, I would imagine she learned them first garment making.
That's
and
interesting.
then
Mhm.
Yeah.
applying it to a flat quilt block.
Okay, there's something I want you to bring that spotlight back on because I something they need to see here.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, I'm putting piece 7 on next to the last piece of the diamond. Now, if you can see here, I took, and I'm getting close to the end. I set my needle in the fabric so it won't move, and I have gathered all of this other stuff that I did before around here. So look I've got kind of a,
Do you
If
mind
that was
turning
that
off your
mess.
sewing machine light so that way we can see?
Oh, yeah, that's better. Yeah.
see, it's all,
See how it's all kind of, it's all gathered up. So it's
Yeah.
out of the way.
and these seam allowances now have been pulled out of the way. So I'm going to turn my little light back on again and go to the end.
So you go to the end, right? Not over the seam allowances, but you go to the end of the stitching line, which is printed on the foundation. Correct.
Right. So now I've made a
Come over here.
turned up mess of this thing. So now I'm going to flatten it out. And if I look, I have not caught any seam allowances in the stitching.
Okay.
Now the
Hmm.
last
You
one.
pieced that really fast.
Huh?
I said you pieced that really fast. Either that or I've just not been paying very much attention.
Well, I took the spotlight off and
Okay.
she just kept going.
Yeah, I kept going, but I've got all of these on except for the last one now. And you'll notice that there's a little bit of a gap right here. That's where I stopped stitching before I got to the end of the line.
Okay.
Okay, now the last piece is piece number 7. There's 7. Match it up. Get it matched out here at the edge.
So when you get to this piece, you got a handful, wadful in there
You
trying to
got a
keep
lot
it
of
out of the
stuff.
way.
Okay. I stuck it through the point there, and I stuck it through the point there, and for goodness sake, I actually did match. Okay, I'm going to hold this and put this pin in at an angle. It's still pretty much still on the line. Not quite. That's not good enough. Okay, now I'm happy with that. Okay, this one is going in at an angle here. It's on the line. Start at the corner.
Okay, turn your light off if you can do that.
Okay. Forward 2 or 3, back 2 or 3, forward to the end. And when I get down here, we're going to set the needle in, and I'm going to gather all of this other stuff and get it off to the side.
Okay.
Don't move the pin until I get right there. All right. And I've
The
managed.
moment of truth
Yeah,
here.
the moment of truth. You got it. Now, the last seam.
So that was the okay, so you got to put
This is the last piece, but this is the last seam. It joins unit 8 to unit 1.
okay. So again, you're doing this same
Same thing. I'm matching up the points. That point with the one on the back side. Oh boy, I got that one. Better not brag. Pride goeth before a fall and all that good stuff.
Okay.
Okay. Down here on the line. On the line there. I got to turn the light on so I can see where to set the needle.
Okay.
Okay, needle set, I'll turn it off.
Okay.
All right. Down the long stretch. Okay. Time to set the needle so the stuff can't get out of the way.
And you raise the presser foot.
I
So
raise the pressure foot. I'm going to try to get all this junk out of the way.
making sure no seam allowances are caught underneath.
Right. Okay. Put the needle down. Continue on and slowly let the pin come out as I sew forward. When I'm at the point, I'm going to back stitch. All right. it's on the line, and I didn't sew through those seam allowances. Now the moment of truth comes.
Kind of like a bird or flower opening,
Yes, and we're going to press it this way.
because there's nothing in holding the seam allowances.
Right.
They're going to. Okay, turn it over.
Cool.
Turn it over there. Okay, and then your center now is going to spiral
Yeah.
because none of the seam allowances have been caught.
Now, the next thing I think I do is I go in here and I take out not all of the seam allowance, not all of the foundation. I want it out at the point.
I was
This is
thinking
one block that takes it.
the center is going to bump up if it's too bulky under
Right.
there.
It will. Yeah,
yeah.
because that's why she's taking just the foundation pieces out of where that center is. So it's going to relieve some of that bulk. So that all she's going to have in there is just the fabric itself.
Right. Very interesting.
And this is a little time consuming, but when I stop and think how long it took Jane Stickle to do all of this stuff with a needle and thread, no sewing machine, I still sit here and wonder at it.
A lot of those little bitty
There's
pieces.
a lot of those little bitty pieces.
So there's 8 pieces. So there's 2 sides to each piece. So there's 16 different seams that come together in the very middle of that. And if you've got at least what, four pieces of fabric on each seam, the very center has got 4 times 16. So that's
I'm going over to my
128.
iron and run this around.
128 pieces of fabric coming right there at the very middle.
Wait, what?
No, 128.
That's a lot. Did I do that right?
No,
That doesn't sound right.
that's not
And there's
right.
16, there's 8 seams that have to join right here at the middle. One,
Uh-huh.
Okay, so there's 8 seams, so there's
4,
half of
5,
that.
6, 7. There's 8 seams that have to come together at the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of a, if I stretch it, now you can see there's a little bit of an opening right there in the middle. That's okay, because that fabric that's on the back side has to have someplace to go. And that's where we get this little twirl going.
Do you have the back of your already made piece so we can see for comparison?
There it is.
Oh, look at how cute. It's like a ballerina in the middle. It's got a cute little twirl.
But there's now that I've got this little twirl going, that's not near as bulky as it was before, because I pinched it and twirled it. Now I'm going to go press this
Okay.
pretty good.
But you can see how all the seams here are pressed in a circle. And the little, that's flat.
Yeah, well,
That's real flat
that's
compared.
flat too. See?
Mhm.
Okay, now then that's done. Now that I've got that done, I can go on and finish putting all of the rest of these pieces in like I did those. So that's that block, and that's, I think, the hardest part that we've done so far.
Mhm.
It
That
just takes time to do this block. I mean, it's not a fast block. I'm not gonna tell you, yeah, you'll whip it out in about 30 minutes, because it's not gonna happen.
Okay, any other questions that we've got on this block,
You
or?
want in here?
Yeah, I'll sit down.
I'm gonna leave if she's gonna come on.
But yeah, is there any other questions on this block, or anything that that we need to clarify, or is what we've said helpful?
Good.
Good. Okay. Okay.
I think so. Just having somebody like walk through it while I'm watching you, and like you walk through it, so that way whenever I actually get around to doing that, I just cut apart the foundations for row 1. Okay, like I am not
Well,
on top of this project.
in case you didn't catch it, we are the 3 generations of the project. My mom and myself, and this is my daughter. So we're the 3 ones. That's why we kind of talk together the way we do.
Yeah.
So, but okay. Well, I think if that's all we've got today, I think we're gonna we're going to call it today, and we'll be back in about 2 weeks with some more. I don't know what we're doing. It's on the agenda. It's got written down somewhere, and we'll look at it when we get to that point. And there's no other questions. I think we're going to sign off, and we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Okay,
All right.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Did you stop your recording?